Today feels like the second time in my life that I'm being carried off the shoulders of others. I have never worked a day in my life. I went from player to coach to a broadcaster, and I am the luckiest guy in the world.
We lost our friend, Jeff Dickerson, the other day. I was an intern for Jeff in 2007. He showed me kindness from day one, and if you ask anybody and what they want to say about Jeff, they'll say the same thing. Kindness from the moment you met the guy, a smile on his face, one of the most respected, kind individuals I've ever been fortunate enough to meet. We're going to miss you, pal. We appreciate you, Parker, as well.
Let's go!
Here the give is taken by Montgomery. And how about this start for the Bears? Where does Glennon go here on 3rd and 2? They protect him this time. It's deflected and picked off. And more disaster for the Giants. It's to Sean Gibson. Back in the end zone. It is caught. Mooney. Touchdown. Glennon looking at pressure. Football is loose again. That's it. There it is. Robert Quinn getting to Glennon, and he has just set a new single-season franchise sack record for the Chicago Bears.
And coming at you live from just the basement, not the basement of the basement, we've been upgraded, of WCPT 820 in Chicago. This is the Sports Cubicle, where the inmates run the asylum, and the boss, well, he's going to yell at us on Monday morning because we're working overtime. Now, you're probably listening right now going, this isn't the family meeting. This isn't Eric Grant. That's not Richard Chew in the chair across from him. They'll be back next week, guys. So, like I said, this is the twice in a lifetime as we present. So, the family meeting will be back next week. Don't you worry. But the man across from me, he's not Richard Chew. He's Mike Mercado. What's up, Mercado?
What's up, Devin? What's going on, Chicago? Happy New Year, everybody. It was an interesting week in sports. The Chicago Bulls are back, and the Bears found themselves on the win column. But is it a win if nobody cares?
Is it a win if they beat a guy the Bears had for how many years? or not even a full year?
It's going to be an interesting show today. We want to make sure that everybody is staying in touch with us. Everybody is going to be interactive on this very special edition of the Sports Cubicle. You can follow us on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. We are live right now on Facebook at the wonderful Facebook page of WCPT 820. Of course, check out the SoundCloud at WCPT 820. And if you missed any one of the past interviews, any one of the past shows, we're all over the universe on your favorite podcast platform at Mercado Airwaves Network and on YouTube at Mercado Airwaves Network. Devin, one of our teammates has subbed back in.
I know. If you're watching the Facebook Live, you saw this man dancing. He's the Paulacious one, Paul Chivari. What's up, Paulie?
Just had to take care of some business.
It's
Glad
funny
to
you
be back.
say that, Paulie, because the one who's on the run right now is the marvelous one, Dan Marver. What's up, Marver?
Well, I'm on. You know, I missed the game, but it looks like we got a franchise quarterback in Andy Dalton.
Yeah, the guy you wanted when they brought in Mike Glennon, the guy we faced this week.
That's correct.
As you heard at the start of the show, it's been a sad week in sports, guys. We lost two icons in sports, in John Madden and Jeff Dickerson, and I couldn't think of anyone better to have on the show today than the man, the myth, the legend himself, the king, the man who's actually met and knows these guys. He's the Rewind Sports 60s Jerry Riles. What's going on, Jerry?
What's up, Tingle? How are you, buddy?
Doing fantastic. Wish we were calling you with better news, though, Jerry.
Yeah, you know what? I appreciate the phone call, and I appreciate you reaching out. But first, I have to say hello to the great Mike Mercado. How are you, buddy? How you doing?
Happy New Year to the man, the myth, the legend, Jerry Riles. Jerry, you know, normally when we ever have you on, it's because there's some breaking news, or what should have been the case where we were highlighting the Chicago Bulls making their claim as the number one team in the Eastern Conference, but you yourself being one of these guys that is a stalwart in our little media family, and hearing the terrible news that we had for Jeff Dickerson. This is coming off of him losing his wife just a few years ago, and the outpouring that came for Parker Dickerson on the GoFundMe page that Adam Schefter retweeted out, and we saw people from Jim Irsay to the Chicago Bears, the Blackhawks, the Bulls. I mean, you know, you having your family tree when it comes to the people you've helped brought up in this industry, including the boys here in the Sports Cubicle, seeing somebody like Jeff Dickerson leave way too early, what does it do to somebody like you?
Wow, you know, thank you again, and of course, hello to Paul Chivari and the marvelous one, Dan Marver. But it was devastating, to say the least, to be honest with you. And the way we all found out is just a testament to who Jeff Dickerson was as a man and as a person. He did not want pity. He didn't want people, crying out, and he didn't want people feeling sorry for him. So he kind of kept it quiet and personal, and just let a few of his current colleagues know what he was going through. So when the news actually happened and it spread like wildfire, it was totally devastating to hear. Obviously, as it's been discussed, and everyone who's been following the story knows and are aware of his wife passing away just a mere almost 3 years ago from battling cancer her own self. And then, of course, his young son, Parker, who he loved dearly. To hear what happened to Jeff at such a young age, at 44 years, was just totally devastating. And for me, knowing JD and having worked with him and just, seeing him around the ballpark or, in the press box or at a golf outing or whatever the case may be, it was just, it was crushing because, and I tweeted out, I said, this guy was just a beautiful person. He was a real, genuine, solid, beautiful man, beautiful person. Not just a broadcaster, not just a co-worker, but this guy was just a great, really a great individual. And it's been in this industry, whether it's radio and television, broadcasting, producing, or whatever the case may be. You don't really run into that many people who are just genuinely just good people, because it's a competitive field, and there are a lot of type A personalities out there, and there are people trying to climb the ladder to accomplish their personal goals or reach to whatever heights they want to reach. Jeff was that person who was just a genuinely good guy. He wasn't that guy who was gonna try to cut your legs out from underneath you. He wasn't going to, backstab you, double talk you, or anything of that nature. He was just a great friend and a great individual. And I could just remember the old sports page at CLTV, hosted by Lou Canellis, and I acted as a co-host for a couple of years on that show. And we had JD on, and the great late Norm Van Leer was a guest on the show as well. Obviously, during the Bulls season, we're talking about what was going on with that franchise. And during a commercial break, Norm Van Leer, and we're talking Bears, and I think it was during the Dick Duran era, but we were talking Bears. And before we came out of break, Norm Van Leer told Jeff Dickerson, he said, "You know what? You keep doing what you're doing." He goes, "You are really, really good at what you do." And he said, "The reason you're so good is the fact that you stick to the facts and you bring it the way that fans want to hear and know what's going on with their team." And for Norm Van Leer to give that type of praise to JD, it was just said volumes. Obviously throughout the newsroom, and it was a very humbling experience for JD to get those great words from the great Norm Van Leer. So he touched everybody in a positive light wherever he walked, and he certainly will be missed for sure.
The godfather of the Sports Cubicle, Jerry Riles, joins us today. You can follow him all over the universe at OneReal, Jerry Riles, and of course at the Rewind Sports 60 on the app, on the website, all over the universe. You can see all of our work there as well. Jerry Riles is one of the best, and talking about the great Jeff Dickerson, one of the better guys in our industry, and you could see from the love that was coming. And, the hits, they were just coming, Jerry, and Paulie here being our local Raiders fan, and I don't think you just had to be a Raiders fan or a video game fan or a fan of movies to love this guy in the one and John Madden. I mean, the one and only. I mean, Paulie, I know you want to step in and talk to Jerry about this, but Paulie, when you heard the news, what did you think? And for somebody like Jerry on the line, seeing so much of just the entire career and how expanded so much of it, what did you see, and where would you go from this when you heard the Madden news?
Well, I knew he was, getting on in years, so it was only a matter of time. But, it's always devastating when you lose somebody. And, to me, he was, broadcaster John Madden. I was too young to experience the coach John Madden era. But, over time, as I learned about the history of the Raiders, just seeing how impactful he was as a coach, how young he was as a coach, and just how he really stuck to his guns and retired from coaching at 42 and straight up said, I'll never coach again. People were trying to lure him in the 80s to come back, and he said, no, I won't do it. And it's crazy to think that every step of the way he got better at the next gig. He was a great assistant coach, a great broadcaster, and then a great video game entrepreneur, at least was willing to put his name on it, but also wanted to have the control of the game itself, to make sure that it was realistic and fan friendly and just, and I think if you could tie, the coaching, the broadcasting, and the video games all together, I think the main thing that he was trying to do was try to spread the love of the game of football and try to incorporate as many people into that, man, woman, young, old, whoever, is invited to enjoy this game with everybody else.
Jerry, hearing that, what do you think the impact of losing somebody like John Madden was?
It's a great impact, and I was surprised that he passed away. Because they just had a Christmas special celebrating his illustrious life, and for him to pass, mere days after that, that's why I was surprised. Obviously, we know he was up there in age, and you hadn't heard a lot about John Madden, but for it to happen so close after the special that they had promoted for a few months now, it was still devastating and shocking to hear an iconic figure such as John Madden passing away. But, the interesting thing about him is the fact that, he said that he's lived a charmed life. To be able to coach in a National Football League with a great franchise and organization in the Raiders, and then go to the broadcast booth and make a tremendous impact there. And then, of course, with the video games, he's touched multiple generations over at least 5 decades. And that's a credit to a man who was just born to do what he did in this short life that we have. But I fell in love with John Madden years ago as a kid, watching him on the sidelines, coaching the Oakland Raiders. And, when football was really football, you had Fred Biletnikoff, you had Lester Hayes, and, this was the era where you could have stick-em all over your body and your uniform and your gloves. And Lester Hayes, he'd be going up against the Dallas Cowboys or, one of those Kansas City Chiefs teams or whatever the case may be, and he would stick the arm up and the ball would just literally stick on his jersey, or any parts of his body because of all the stickum that you can wear. And eventually that's how they outlawed it because of the abuse of the usage of it. But I remember those days with John Madden, patrolling the sidelines and barking out calls, and his Raiders would go out there. Al Davis loved him to death. And, one thing for sure, when you played that Raiders team, win or lose, and they were kind of like the Bears of the West Coast during a certain period of time, but you always knew you were going to be in a football game with the Oakland Raiders. Lester Hayes, as I mentioned, Jack Tatum destroying people on the defensive side of the ball. So John Madden, and you thought once he was done there, you were disappointed as a football fan, but of course he transitioned to the broadcast booth, and he took that with Pat Summerall to another level. And it was entertaining to hear this man, a former head coach, describe the action and bring it into a real person perspective. And I also remember, doing the Thanksgiving games when he'd have the drumstick, and he was the one that came up with the idea, or his producers and director, they came up with the turkey with like 6 or 8 drumsticks, It's like, how did they do that? But they created that because if an offensive line, for instance, the Dallas Cowboys back in the day, if they won on Thanksgiving Day, they wanted to give a drumstick to all the offensive linemen. So you had to have more than one drumstick, and that was a creation of John Madden and that great illustrious team that they put together. And then obviously we all know about the video games. My son and I can remember we'd be up in the wee hours of the morning, playing John Madden video games, and I'd be kicking his butt like at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. And my wife would wake up and say, "What are you guys down there doing?" And we're like, nothing. But for him to transition his brand and his life from one stage to the next, and still be involved in the game at such a high level. And this is before ESPN, keep in mind. So the accessibility was limited, but he made it. He made it that you wanted to be involved as far as the National Football League is concerned. So he certainly will be missed, and he's made an incredible impact on the sport as well as our society, and obviously the world of sports all in all.
And Jerry, we actually have a caller who wants to comment a little bit on what you're saying. Jim from Chicago, you said you want to talk about back when what football used to be?
I was just talking about Jim McMahon. I was listening to the Notre Dame game, and Ryan Harris had lunch with Jim McMahon the day before. And he asked Jimmy, he said, how long have you played? He said, I can't even watch football anymore. He can't even, and he was the best quarterback the Bears have ever had. He had a football sense that you can't buy. And he said, it's such a different game, you can't even watch it. And today you've got Glenn Lennon out there. What's he making? $15 million a year, and he can't find his parking spot in the parking lot. I mean, the game has changed so dramatically with exponential money going through the ceiling. Owners worth $4 or $5 billion, and it's a completely different game. They have to protect it like you would Broadway stars on Broadway. You can't give them COVID. You can't. The show must go on. Anyway, you guys have a great afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you for calling, Jim. And yeah, he does make a valid point. Let's transition on to the Chicago Bears game today. And good old Mike Lennon, he threw for a whopping total of 24 yards today, guys, and 2 interceptions. And 4 or 5 years ago, this was our guy. This was our quarterback.
This was Ryan Pace's, guys. Jerry, seeing what you've seen this entire season, you and I have had some really interesting conversations in the beginning of the season. Where we're at right now, I mean, we're all of us here, we don't like talking about people losing their jobs. Marver and I have talked about it, but what you see from this Bears team heading into the last week, next week, you believe, right, that this team looks like there's going to be total overhaul. We saw the report from Ian Rappaport today. I mean, where are you at with the Chicago Bears and their future moving forward?
No, I think we're 1 year removed. I think the Bears organization, they let this thing linger on too long. And you guys can remember, was it last year or whatever, that we had George McCaskey on with the Bears, and we talked about Nagy's future. And we know that they don't fire coaches during the regular season. And I don't really understand that. But, for them to let him stay on another year, it just pushed back the development and the growth and the direction that we want to go in as far as the city and as far as the organization is concerned. And the fans in Chicago deserve more. We deserve better. We support whoever is on the sidelines, especially for the Chicago Bears. But you have to earn your keep, and you have to prove your worth. And I just think that the Bears, for whatever reason, let this thing linger and go on longer and longer and longer. And I'm glad that Justin Fields is not playing. I thought that after he suffered the rib injuries a few weeks back, that they should have put him on the shelf. They allowed him to come back one game and play again. Obviously, he hurt the ankle, so he's out. But he wasn't going to grow and develop under this coaching staff. And I think that Nagy, in the hiring of him, was good on paper, obviously with the coaching tree and Andy Reid in Kansas City. But I think Nagy, being a first-year head coach, did not know and never learned how to adjust to put his ego aside. It always appeared to be Nagy, this is me. And he even challenged the media when they questioned some of his decisions and some of his moves. And I felt that Matt Nagy was too full of himself. He didn't have enough insight to say, you know what, I need to step back from me and let my coaches do what they're capable of doing, why I brought them in here, let the players do it. But he felt that his system, his logic, his way of thinking was the right way and the only way, and he tried to force feed everyone, not only in the building, but the fans alike. And eventually, it just caught up to him.
He's the man, the myth, the legend, the godfather of the Sports Cubicle, Jerry Riles. You can follow him all over the universe. He's on Twitter at @OneRealJerry Riles. And, of course, the Rewind Sports 60. Check out the app. Check out the website. We can't let Jerry leave the show without having a little reunion with Dan Marver. Marver, before we let the good one, the best one of Jerry Riles leave us, you have any thoughts about what we've been talking about? Any final words for our guy, Jerry?
Of course. How about those Ohio State Buckeyes?
Buckeyes, Marver.
I thought you mentioned that first before anything else.
Marver.
So,
well, I have to give just due to again a great friend, Jeff Dickerson, what he meant to not only his coverage of the teams and the Bears here in Chicago, and what he brought to the broadcast industry. So I could not put the Buckeyes ahead of that. But what a game yesterday! What an incredible game, and the numbers that C.J. Stroud put up, and I mean, and these are with players. This is a team that had players that opted out of the Rose Bowl, either one because they're preparing for the next level, to play at the next level on Sunday afternoons, or they somewhat felt that because they didn't make it to the playoffs, the college football playoff, that the Rose Bowl wasn't meaningful enough. What a performance by the Ohio State Buckeyes! Record-breaking performance. God bless them. And you know what? The Big Ten. We started off good, but we kind of hit a bump in the road with the team up north falling, which I was happy for, and of course the Iowa Hawkeyes and Penn State going down. But the Buckeyes made a lasting impression, and that's a game that people will watch forever for sure. But no, it was fantastic. It was outstanding, and the Buckeyes certainly needed that victory for sure.
And Jerry, thank you so much for joining us today. Now, I believe we have an app. There's a Rewind Sports 60 app. There's a Roku channel. You're on Fire Stick. There's that big satellite that hovers in the sky that tweets out the Rewind Sports 60. Am I forgetting any other way that you can watch or listen to the show?
Hey, man, let me tell you something. It's the Rewind Sports 60 brand is continuing to go global, no question about it. And I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to come on and talk with you. And I just want people to know, if you want to get the app, it's the rewindsports60.com. The app is available. Go to the App Store. You can go to Google Play, download the app for free, and obviously you'll get a chance to listen to the Sports Cubicle and all these beautiful voices and beautiful people that are on the air right now, because they are on the Roku channel. They're on the Fire Stick channel, the Apple and the Android apps as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, feel free. Download that app. We need all of your support. But before I go, I do have to say, I how they say hindsight, what is it? Hindsight is 20/20.
Yes.
Is that what they say? Mm. So it's interesting. Back to Jeff Dickerson really quick. So many people may know, many people may not know, but obviously I worked at the Score for 13 years, sports radio, from, the beginning stages all the way through the early 2000s. And back in, I think it was 2001, maybe 2002, Jeff Dickerson, how we met and became friends, he worked at the Score. And he ended up jumping ship and going to WMVP, or ESPN at the time, in its early stages. And we were down in Houston, where the Cubs were taking on the Houston Astros at Minute Maid Park, and we were sitting in the press box. And Dickerson, we're sitting next to each other in the press box, and Dickerson more or less made me an offer. He asked me, he said, "Hey, Jerry, do you want to come on over to MVP and come over to ESPN Radio?" Because he had just been there maybe for a few months or maybe a year at the most. And he was, I guess, trying to recruit some talent to come over there to help get the station moving in the right direction. And at this time, I was the executive producer of the top sports show in the city of Chicago. And he was really pulling for me to come on over there and join him. to bring some name recognition and try to, get the station moving forward. And I did, honestly, I had to think about it. Because again, I was writing, I was doing pretty well with the show that I was producing. And, I was like, I don't know, do I want to leave a championship type of situation to go over to another situation, albeit it's the ESPN brand, but I was like, I think I'm good here. And so I decided to stay. And, obviously when you look back on it, maybe that was the time to, to jump ship and go on with Jeff Dickerson, and who knows, what would have transpired from there. But I always remember that story for the simple fact that he felt enough, love and confidence and support that he wanted to bring me along with him to help get things rolling down the dial. So I'll always be very grateful for the relationship and the friendship. But I just wanted to share that with you guys and their listening audience. Jeff Dickerson is one of a kind, no question about it. He certainly will be missed, and I'm glad that monies have been raised to help take care of his 11-year-old son, Parker, who I know many of us never would want to be in a situation like that, to lose both your parents in a matter of a couple years. So God bless the people who have reached out to help out and watch over Parker.
Thank you so much, Jerry. We appreciate everything, and we appreciate you sharing a kind word about one of the best in our industry, one of the good guys in the world. He's the one and only Jerry Riles. Follow him at the Rewind Sports 60 and on Twitter at Real Jerry Riles.
One quick thing before you go, Jerry. Did you say you were with the Score right from the beginning?
I came on. The Score started
30 years ago today. 30 years ago today.
Yeah, 30 years today. I came on in April of '92.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
April of '92.
How crazy is it that 30 years to the day you're on the same frequency?
It's you know what, when we started, when I approached the general manager Mark Penske and I reflected on it, I was like, this is amazing how my career and how things unfolded. I started broadcast here in Chicago at 8:20, and of course to wrap up with my show, and obviously you guys are doing it. To be on 8:20, the frequency is just hey man, the only thing I can say is that we don't know where we're going and how we're going to get there, but the important thing to know and to do is to enjoy the journey, and I've enjoyed the journey.
We love you, Jerry. We appreciate the time. We got a lot still coming up here on Sports Cubicle TV, and it's always a treat to have the one and only Jerry Riles with us. Follow us on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. We have a jam-packed show.
Chicago Heel.
I believe in the vaccine.
I'm just be honest here. I was not a believer in vaccines, but I went ahead and got the vaccine, the J&J, back in April, because I was worried about the people around me.
Yeah.
More than myself.
Yeah. I have no hesitancy about the vaccine. I mean, you know why?
Why?
I've seen all these white people taking it.
Tune in to Chicago Heel Sundays at 6 p.m. on WCPT.
Susan, it's so great to finally be able to get together again.
Oh, it sure is. And I really appreciate you picking up the bill.
I'm happy to. I've got the extra cash. Since we've all been driving so much more again, I've been using Get Upside, the free gas app that pays you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get paid cash when you buy gas with the Get Upside app?
Yes, up to 25 cents a gallon. Cash back every time I buy gas.
Does that actually add up to anything?
Some months I make $200 to $300.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the free Get Upside app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now in the App Store or Google Play to save up to 25 cents a gallon when you buy gas. Use promo code FUN for a 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's up to 50 cents a gallon on your next fill-up. You can cash out anytime to PayPal or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code FUN for a 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code FUN.
This is a WCPT Civil Rights Snapshot. Earl Lloyd was the star of West Virginia State's basketball team, leading them to 2 championship games in 1948 and 1949. Due to Lloyd's success, he was drafted by the Washington Capitals in the 9th round, and October 31st, 1950, Lloyd became the first black player to play in the NBA. Joining an all-white team was intimidating, but my teammates were immediately welcoming, said Lloyd on the experience. However, some fans, even some commentators, were not so kind. one even using a racial slur during Lloyd's first game. Lloyd spent 9 seasons playing in the NBA, ending his career with the Detroit Pistons in 1970. After playing, Lloyd stayed in Detroit, becoming a scout and then later an assistant coach of the Detroit Pistons before breaking the color barrier again, becoming the first black head coach in the NBA. Lloyd was inducted into the NBA Hall of Fame in 2003. Please stay vigilant about our civil rights. The fight is never over.
And welcome back to the Sports Cubicle. Thank you so much for spending your Sunday afternoons with us. And yes, if you're going, this isn't the family meeting like one of you did, don't worry, they will be back next week. But this is our twice in a lifetime. This isn't going to happen until maybe the end of next year. Or this year, I should say now. I don't know. Now let's get to the story that everyone, I think everyone in Chicago is talking about this. I was on Facebook, I was on Twitter. Just take a listen.
Bulls look for the win. DeRozan to win it. Goal!
All right, that sounds like the New Year's heave, right? Is that the New Year's heave or is that the New Year's tray?
That is the New Year's heave because the New Year's tray was just another scenario in back-to-back nights as the Chicago Bulls on buzzer beaters from DeMar DeRozan, the guy who nobody wanted the Bulls to get. The one that was the biggest upset, if you will, that upset all of the journalists in the NBA of the offseason, that signing. Marver, simple question. Are the Bulls back?
Looks like it. All you can do is look at the record, and they're the top team in the East. And but who would have thunk it? It's unbelievable. I mean, you're right about DeRozan. I mean, he's the key to their success. You know, as a compliment, of course, to the other star that they have. I mean, you got to have two guys always to offset one another. So Levine, of course. So you know, it's crazy. I would have never expected it, but I think they're for real this year.
It just goes to show what happens when you have people who are in charge that are able to evaluate talent and be competent and a coach that's able to build a rotation. This is a team that they do have deficiencies. You know, somebody like Kobe White, for example, he's not known for his defense. But what is he doing when he's out there? He's trying. He's moving his feet. He's moving his hands. He's active out there. Whether or not you're going to make the big play that's irrelevant if you're actually going out there putting the effort. And what you got to love, at least in my opinion, is what you're seeing the competition on the field between Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu. On that court, those two are fighting for the same position. They're fighting for playing time, and it's bringing the best out of a cat who, in Kobe White, has had a lot of drama behind him when it comes to people thinking, is he the piece that's going to get traded? Is he going to be the piece that's kind of left out with all these new moves? And then you have Ayo, who a lot of people thought this was a lottery pick until U of I stumbled against Loyola, and all of a sudden he's a second rounder. There are dogs on this team. DeMar DeRozan was traded for Kawhi Leonard and essentially forgotten when they won the title. You would think a guy like that who essentially, other than Vince Carter, was the Toronto Raptors. So you got guys on this team right now who want to win. And I think if for a lot of Chicago, what's really exciting is these back-to-back games with DeMar. They're in every single game. And it wasn't until that 2010-2011 team that you've seen something like this. I don't know about you, Devin, but when you're watching this Bulls team, you see the excitement, you see the talk on social media. What are your feelings? You know, we're making this shtick, are the Bulls are back, but obviously this is a team that can compete. What are your feelings almost halfway through the season on your Chicago Bulls?
I mean, very valid point that this does remind me of the Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah era back, when I was in high school. That's the team I remember. I was like super, I don't know about you guys, I was super little to the Michael Jordan era, but I knew he was the king. But I'm definitely seeing a much better team and a team that is hungry. But as we're looking at this Eastern Conference, we got the Nets, the Bucks, and the Heat. This is a very close race for first place here. I mean, this is anyone's teams. And as I've been saying with the Bulls, their biggest gripe is they always, I don't know if they slow down or don't play their best against these worser teams. But you need to just kind of, go into every game with the same mindset as Matt Nagy as that sounds for me to say. This is something that I'd like to see with the Bulls here. But I'm liking what I'm seeing right now. They're having a lot of fun games, and people that aren't even sports fans. Like my old boss was posting about the game last night. I'm like, you've never seen a sporting event in your damn life, Laura. What are you talking about here? But it's definitely nice to see a team that's got us going exciting here. And especially with the Bears and the Blackhawks right now, to see a team that's actually performing and winning and is exciting, I think this is something nice that the city of Chicago needs.
And you just brought up something interesting, and Paulie and I have talked about this before when it comes to the growth of Justin Fields. The Bulls right now, games matter Wins matter, losses matter, playing time matters. This Giants game that we just saw with the Bears winning, right? Other than Robert Quinn getting the record, which shout out to him. I mean, he earned it in 16 games too, by the way. So anybody who wants to say that the extended season might have played something into it, that's a different conversation. But you look at what the Bulls are doing. Every single time DeMar has hit a game-winning shot, it matters. It's part of development. Every single time Zach LaVine wins a game like this, he's part of a roster like this. It matters. This is a guy who hasn't been to the playoffs. Same thing with Vucevic. These guys are learning on the spot, and this is what we're talking about, consequences, about games of consequences, where you could talk about, oh, should have Andy Dalton play this one? What about Nick Foles? What does it matter if you're not making the playoffs? Repetition matters. You beating bums, and I say that lightly because everybody in the NBA can ball, right? But when we're talking about in perspective of the league, if you're supposed to beat a team, you need to beat them. Whether you're coming back from behind, whether you got a 20-point lead, you're learning all these different things. You're learning different situations. And I think for Bulls fans, it's no longer like, how far can this team go? It's, what does this team need to do to solidify it going far?
773-763-9278. Please give us a call. We want to know your thoughts on Chicago Bulls here. And again, one thing I'm seeing a lot, Mercado, with the Bulls is a lot of these games, they're essentially, I said last night, they're kind of a little too close for comfort, in my opinion, here. And that might be one thing the Bulls need to step up on their offense.
And Paulie and I have talked about this before on different shows when it comes to COVID is a big thing in the NBA right now. Teams are being ravaged. So not only do you have to win the games you have to win, this is a team that's winning these games without Alex Caruso and without Lonzo Ball. So, I mean, Paulie, you watching this team, you're interested in this team. How impressed are you that they're doing it at different points without their entire starting team? And when you have seen them, they played good against the teams like the Brooklyn Nets.
Well, you must be reading my mind, because I was going to bring up that they've been winning these recent games without Ball and Caruso, but just broke by Casey Johnson of the Tribune. I believe he's still with the Tribune. He was saying that Lonzo Ball has been taken off the injury report, so he
should be back sooner.
Might be playing tomorrow against the Magic. There's nothing been confirmed about that. But a tough stretch coming up here. I mean, yes, Orlando should be a winnable game at the United Center tomorrow. Then you got to wait until the end of the week, and you get that rematch against the Wizards, who have that bad taste in their mouth after what happened last night. But then you go on the road to Dallas. You got Brooklyn, Golden State, at Boston, at Memphis. That's going to be a grind, ending with that Martin Luther King Day game on the 17th against the Grizzlies on the road. So, we'll see what this Bulls team is made out of, but right now they're in the top of the power rankings in the East right now, and really could be a contender when we're talking about, maybe we're getting a little ahead of ourselves here, but, when was the last time you considered the Bulls as a legit contender in the Eastern Conference? An
exciting contender, and Marver, I'm going to throw it to you about this one, because I think this team, as I was saying earlier, is going to be something that they just need to solidify themselves. They're already in a position. They've given them enough cushion where they should be a playoff team, but they're going to have to make a move. And I think it's not going to be the most drastic of moves. I think this is a move more for depth and for a veteran to come in, help get rebounds, help solidify the baskets, and to be somebody that could basically be 5 fouls. And Marver, if you're right now AK and Mark Eversley, what are you looking for? Are you looking for a veteran? Are you looking for a big? Are you being aggressive in the trade deadline, knowing full well you might have a legit shot at winning title number 7?
Oh, I think they do need a banger, out of this Rodman type, but somebody, like, I agree totally with the rebounding concept. I mean, they were even playing this, recently without their coach, and they were winning. So, I think that a big would really help them. Another big. Don't you think so?
I think it's probably the move that they need to. I've always looked at somebody like a Thaddeus Young type, where you're looking for a veteran that's going to get bought out, and you're looking for somebody that still has miles under them, but is playing for an organization that just needed the contract in order to make space for the next few years coming up. And I think the Bulls have the front office, and we've learned this. They're going to make a move. They're going to be aggressive. They think it's going to be better for their franchise and for their roster. And mind you, all this is going on, and you know who's having quietly a season that's going to make him a boatload of money? And that's Zach LaVine. This is a guy who's going to get a max deal next year. And that's what this team is doing. So they're going to have to be creative. And there are going to be guys that you do like on the team that are going to be on the chopping block, like a Javonte Green or a Derrick Jones Jr. But I think this Bulls team has put themselves in a position right now. They could be creative, and they could also be aggressive. And I think for all of us at this point, it's just a matter of how healthy can you be? Not just COVID related, but can you avoid a catastrophic injury? And if somebody else in the Eastern Conference is going to stay 100%, is Philadelphia one bad move away and one bad foot from Joel Embiid from not being relevant? What about Brooklyn? How much confidence do you have in the Brooklyn Nets? That's where we're at now at this point as Bulls fans. Almost at the halfway point of the season. We're talking about all-star games. The Brooklyn Nets have the best player in the league. But are you confident Kyrie Irving is only being able to play half his games, those being on the road, going to be enough to help gel with that team? We've seen the matchup that the Bulls match up pretty well against Brooklyn. But what happens when you play a lesser team, quote unquote, like Miami? You may be better than Miami on paper, but they're a matchup nightmare. So, I mean, if you guys are looking at it right now, how confident are you? Are we talking about, like, they can win this? Like, you guys are willing to put money on the Chicago Bulls making a run at the Eastern Conference? Or are we, like Paul said, maybe getting a little bit ahead of ourselves? What do you think, Paul?
I think they got to go and get that big man. I mean, it's obvious how they're getting killed on the glass, especially defensively, especially on the road. You can't depend on Vucevic the entire time. So, I want to see them go out and grab a big or a rebounder or somebody to kind of help them. And I don't think I'm willing to put down money on it, but I think if you were telling me who are the 4 hottest teams right now in the Eastern Conference, the Bulls have to be up there. Now, will it transfer to success in April and May? I don't know. And how much is a lack of experience from not making the playoffs the last few years, or for guys being in different systems or on different teams in the playoffs the last few years, how much is that going to affect them once they start tipping off in April for playoff games?
Have you guys been this excited about NBA basketball in a while? I think this is something Chicago hasn't experienced because of just how downtrodden this organization was. I'm a diehard NBA fan, so I'm constantly watching the association. But the Bulls, it's one of these tentpole franchises. How different has it been for you, Paulie, as an observer watching the NBA and the Bulls more specifically this year?
And I'm definitely a fair weather NBA fan. So if the Bulls are good, I'm watching the NBA. So it's excited me. It's gotten me back into it. And I was one of those people during the Gar Forman, John Paxson years with the Bulls where it's like, okay, I hung with them for so long that it finally hit a point maybe about a season or two ago where I was like, you know what, I'm done. It's not that I won't be a Bulls fan. It's just it's going to be hard for me to be in their corner until upper management changes. And you saw how instantly that impact was once they got rid of Garpax and brought in AK and Eversley to do their job. Billy Donovan too, a competent coach, probably the first one since Thibodeau that they've had. So, I think when you talk about that, it's, it has me excited, and I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket, but I also want to see sustainable, repeated trips to, the Eastern Conference semis, at least for the next few years, and maybe beyond that if they can sustain that.
The family meeting will be back right here on WCPT next week, but we are here bringing in the new year on the Sports Cubicle. We are enjoying the Chicago Bulls, the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference. The Chicago Bears found a win, whether it's meaningless or not. It is a win in the National Football League. And of course, earlier on today, we were able to remember Jeff Dickerson and talk a little bit about John Madden. We'll actually do a little bit more on John Madden and the other end of the show. But I wanted to bring it up to the audience. Where can the people of the Sports Cubicle reach us? Because I want to know, is DeMar DeRozan a legitimate MVP candidate? We know Giannis is always going to be there. We know LeBron's always going to be there. Devin Booker, John Morant, there's a lot of studs there. But Devin, we want to know from the audience, where can they reach us? I want to know from the peoples, is DeMar DeRozan an MVP?
Well, if you want to call in right now, 773-763-9278, 773-763-WCPT, if that's easier for you to remember us. We're on Facebook. I got it up here. So you can find us at WCPT820 on Facebook. And you can tweet us at the Sports Cubicle TV. My man Mercado there, he is the Twitter wizard, and he's made that account one hell of a Twitter account. If you're not following it yet, you guys are missing out here.
And we really want to be a part of this conversation. We'll throw it to the marvelous one right now, the scout of the show, the coach of the show, Marver. What is he in the conversation for MVP? And if he's not, what is it going to take for DeMar DeRozan to be a legitimate contender, a legitimate bidder for the MVP conversation in a stacked NBA full of superstars?
Well, it has to do with how your team does, I think, a lot. And, it will be thrown the current Greek freak who is a current MVP. And it would be very interesting to see the Bulls play Milwaukee in a series. I'm not sure how they would match up. I think they would have some problems. But that would be a matchup I'd like to see. And I know the voting probably is after the regular season, not after the playoffs, right? So if the Bulls are at the top of the heat, he's a legitimate contender for the MVP, no doubt about it.
Do you guys think that he's a legitimate contender? I believe he is. I think in Chicago's a smart basketball town, so I don't think that we're just going to bring a random player and remember when Peyton Hillis was on the cover of Madden because he had a good season for the Cleveland Browns? Like, Chicago doesn't do that. Like, we do put a lot of guys on pedestals, but we do know sports for the most part. Do you think for the most part that DeMar DeRozan's actually going to get real consideration if he stays pace? Like, this is a hard pace for him to keep up to. Like, DeMar's been a great player. DeMar is a great player. These are MVP numbers. I mean, if I had to ask you guys, do you really think that this is sustainable for him, an MVP season? And if he does sustain it, what do you think, Paul? Do you think he's actually going to be in real consideration for most valuable player?
Well, what's real consideration? Like top 5, top 10 in voting?
Top 3.
Top 3? No, I don't think so. And I think especially because I think they're going to lean towards the favorites. You're talking about a year where Curry's having the Warriors playing lights out again. Yeah. You're talking about, who knows what James Harden or Kevin Durant's going to do, and will they cancel each other out? I don't know. But also, once Ball and Caruso are back in form, will that take away some of DeRozan's, the dependence on DeRozan? But, we talk about DeRozan and the legitimate MVP candidacy, but who was the player of the game last night? And it was Levine with his 30 points. So I think there's just way too much on this team where it's not really one valuable player on this team. I think it's a valuable team, a cohesive unit of guys that maybe takes away from DeRozan to be the superstar, whereas other teams like a LeBron or a Curry or a Durant kind of have to be in that role and have to be kind of launched into that status to be the lead scorer, to be the guy that they depend on to take the final shot all of the time.
You do bring up a good point, and I'll throw to Dev on this one. Who is the alpha on the Chicago Bulls? I do think that these two don't necessarily have a ego. I think they are willing to distribute to one another and play off of each other, but usually you do know who the number one is. And I think Zach LaVine is probably the better player, but I think this is DeMar's team.
I agree with you. And you say, who is the alpha? I think based on the fact that we've seen a few of these buzzer beater shots from DeRozan this year, who's the guy that's going to have the ball in his hands? Whether they draw it up that way or it ends up being that way, it seems like that's the guy that wants the shot at the end. So I think it's DeRozan is the quote-unquote alpha dog, but at the same time, I think Levine is your lead scorer.
What do you think, Dev? Like, if you had to put not who's the face of the team, but who's the alpha of the team?
Well, that's a very good question here. I got both their numbers up in here, and they're pretty much identical right now here. And my thing is, does anyone have to be the face of this team? As a current White Sox fan, I'll bring it back to 2005. Paul, who is the face of that team? Was it your Paul Konerko? Was it your Mark Burley? Your John Garland? Your Jermaine Dye? There was no one face there.
There's no one guy, but I'd say Konerko just because he had such a lights-out season that year, though. He was, 40. But you talk about Bobby Jenks, but he wasn't even up before the 4th of July that year.
And think about how much of the lore he is of that 05 team. It goes into what you guys are saying, like, history's going to decide who the face of this organization is, right? Like, who the face of this team. If this team makes it to the finals, if this team makes it to the conference finals, history will tell us who the alpha was. Because you could say the same thing about, like, LeBron was the best player on the Miami Heat team, but Dwayne Wade was like the alpha of that team. Even with Shaq and Dwayne Wade, Dwayne Wade was a baby, but he not only was the best player, he was the alpha of that team. And I think, Marver, if you had to guess, watching all the basketball you watch, all the Bulls basketball you watch, even the comp to the 05 White Sox, who's not the face of this team, but who's the alpha? Who's the bane dog of the Chicago Bulls?
Only because he's been there longer. It might be Levine, honestly, because he's been there a little bit longer. So sometimes that counts in, but somebody's, they're more familiar with him because he's been with the team a number of years. But I don't think it'd be a tough call. I would pick him if I had to make a choice. And you do make a good point about the two of them. I mean, it's kind of like with the Nets. You have two great players, so it's probably going to go to somebody else like Curry or the Greek Freak or whomsoever for MVP. But I think I'm gonna vote for Levine on that one, guys.
All right, guys, I did my research and I found the 2 top-selling Bulls jerseys. Number 1's Michael Jordan, so that's a hands down. That's the face of this team still. But Zach LaVine is number 2 in current Bears Bulls selling jersey. So I think that answers the question: who's the face of the team? Who sells more merchandise?
We'll see how popular number 11 is next offseason if this Bulls team actually makes a run for it. But I'm fascinated because Chicago loves Bulls basketball. That is one thing that you could tell when the Bulls are not only good, but they're exciting. And I think that's something that we've been talking about the Sports Cubicle for a long time is whether you win championships or not. I mean, that's that's always the ultimate goal, right? But you're also looking to be entertained. You're also looking for people to be good at their job. And with the Chicago Bulls, they're going to give you a good product, and they're coached really well. And I think that's all this city, that's all a fan base can ever ask for. And for a organization that has such a huge shadow to overcome in Michael Jordan, a team like this, whether they win number 7 or not, I think is not the point. It's going to be a team like this that's going to have to overcome something like that. It's not going to be a team that has the next LeBron James. Because if the Bulls ever get the next LeBron James, you know what the problem's going to be if they've never won number 7? Is this guy the next Michael Jordan? What you're going to need is a team that has not 1, not 2, but 3 All-Stars. People forget this Bulls team has 3 All-Stars on it. Like, how many times have the Bulls been on the other side of this? Where, like, you have it Derrick Rose, you're like, all right, we have our for sure All-Star. And maybe a borderline of Luol Deng, and Joakim is beloved. But, like, you have 3 legitimate voted-in All-Stars on this team. There is a difference. And I think that's really exciting for a lot of Bulls fans. And I think it's going to be something that they're going to have to also learn, is being the favorite. Being a team that no longer is being slept on. Guess what? Milwaukee's not going to sleep on the Bulls. Giannis is going to come in and he's going to get his.
Have you ever considered the Bucks a rival to the Bulls before the season?
No, not before the season. I think those two organizations have never been good at the same time against each other. Like,
although they met in the playoffs back, just not too long ago, like 5 years ago or so.
And I think maybe in today's NBA, I don't think playoffs are where rivalries are born, but you really start seeing them really develop in like the second and third round. And I also think that the NBA is very friendly now with each other. A lot of these guys have the same agents. A lot of these guys are part of the same clientele.
Yeah, how do super teams happen?
Yeah, but then you see what happened between the Sixers and the Nets. I think it was last night or 2 nights ago, between Joel Embiid and Kevin Durant. So there is beef around these. Like these guys want to win titles, and we're part to blame for it here in the media and as fan bases, because these dudes know that they're judged completely on if they win championships. And look at who's starting to get a little flustered. You can start looking around. It's like, whose clock is ticking? Joel Embiid needs to win one. Giannis winning his completely changed his career. You're starting to see like, oh, Chris Paul could really use if Chris Paul wants to be the greatest point guard of all time, he really needs a Larry O'Brien trophy. Mm-hmm. Like that's what we've done. And think about what it would do for DeMar DeRozan, who was traded from Toronto, the franchise that he is the best player since Vince Carter. And think about that, since Vince Carter. Traded for Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard goes on this crazy season, wins Toronto, the Toronto Raptors, an NBA Finals. And DeMar is getting better playing the point guard under Greg Popovich in San Antonio, and finds a way to Chicago, tries to have an MVP season. I mean, sometimes you can't write it. I think this is one of those storybook things that if they're able to be the Phoenix of this year, it'd be something really interesting to see. But we want to know your thoughts over on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. Devin, where can the fine people find us?
Well, there's a lot of places our friend Jerry Riles told us. You know, you can find us on Facebook at WCPT820, per Chicago's Progressive Talk. You can find us at Sports Cubicle TV. You can find us on YouTube at Mercado Airwaves. You can find us on the Rewind Sports 60s Roku channel, Fire Stick channel, on their app. I think if you look in the sky, that big glimpse satellite Jerry's got going on has all our ugly mugs and Mercado's beautiful mane on it.
Jerry is Batman, basically.
Essentially. It's a thing. Paul Chivari, Mike Mercado, the marvelous one, Dan Marver, yours truly, Devin Tingle. Please stick around for the second hour. Got a great show.
Patty Vasquez.
We have Congressman Raja with us. This exchange has gone viral. You have over 1 million views on our TikTok.
So I basically asked the question, if God forbid your daughter were raped and became pregnant, would you force her to carry the fetus to term?
And her reaction was, I'm working to live in a world where making decisions about abortion are necessary. And it's so maddening because they don't.
Driving it home with Patty Vasquez. Weeknights from 5 to 6 p.m. on WCPT 820.
Susan, I'm sorry I'm late. Traffic is terrible.
It sure is. But on top of that, gas prices have been skyrocketing. I can't believe how expensive gas has gotten recently.
Prices at the pump are up, but I never pay full price for gas anymore. I just use the free Get Upside Gas app that pays you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get paid cash when you buy gas with the Get Upside app?
Yes, up to 25 cents a gallon cash back every time I buy gas.
And does that actually add up to anything?
Some months I make $200 to $300. $10.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the free Get Upside app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now in the App Store or Google Play to save up to 25 cents a gallon when you buy gas. Use promo code RACE for a 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's up to 50 cents a gallon on your first fill-up. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or any gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code RACE for up to 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first tank. That's code RACE.
NBC News Radio, I'm Chris Coraggio. 2 people are still missing following the devastating wildfires that ripped through Boulder County late last week.
We are in the process today of trying to locate and, if possible, recover those folks.
Sheriff Joe Pelley confirmed the figure during a news conference Sunday. Governor Jared Polis and FEMA Administrator Deanne Criswell also took part. Both urged residents affected by the wildfires to make use of community resources like a disaster assistance center set up in Lafayette to help victims with everything from insurance claims to mental health support. The Boulder County fire burned over 6,000 acres as of Friday morning and destroyed nearly 1,000 structures. President Biden is reaffirming U.S. support for Ukraine in an evening phone call to that country's president. The White House says the 2 leaders were scheduled to discuss Russia's troop buildup along Ukraine's border. Last week, Biden warned Moscow that the U.S. could impose sanctions against Russia if it takes military action against Ukraine. Many holiday travelers are still having a hard time getting home because of flight cancellations. Data from FlightAware shows over 3,700 flights have been canceled worldwide on January 2nd. 5,000 have been canceled or delayed within, into, or out of the U.S. Air carriers are blaming the mass cancellations on COVID-19 and winter weather. Another drug company may be offering a COVID vaccine this year. Novavax biotech company filed its final data with the FDA on Friday. Novavax says if all goes according to plan, its next step will be to submit a request for emergency approval within the next month. The company says its COVID vaccine is protein-based, setting it apart from Pfizer, Moderna, and Johnson & Johnson. With the holiday break over, New York City public schools are set to reopen for in-classroom learning Monday with added precautions due to COVID outbreaks. Vaccinated and non-vaccinated students will be tested now. There will be increased testing that can be done at home to avoid shutting down entire classrooms when 1 or 2 students test positive and must quarantine. You're listening to the latest from NBC News Radio.
This is Chicago's Progressive Talk, 820 AM, WCPT Willow Springs, and online at WCPT820.com, where facts matter.
There is truth and there are lies. Lies told for power and for profit. And each of us has a duty and a responsibility as citizens, as Americans, to defend the truth and defeat the lies.
You're listening to WCPT 820 because facts matter.
Tom Hartman.
But it looks to me like the only explanation that I can come up with is that they want more people to die. Now, why would they want more people to die? Well, because if they can get the pandemic rolling again here in the United States, it will cause states to shut down. And if states shut down, then the economy goes in the tank. And if the economy goes in the tank, the party in power always loses the next election.
The Tom Hartman radio program, weekdays 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. on WCPT 820, where facts matter.
The Rewind Sports 60 channel on ROKU. Watch us 24 hours, 7 days a week, around the clock on the new TRS 60 ROKU channel. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and the TRS 60 app. The new TRS ROKU channel, your round-the-clock sports and entertainment channel. If you miss any portion of the show, be sure to look out for the continuous replay broadcasts on ROKU. Don't forget to check out our website, therewindsports60.com. Lock it in.
Susan, I'm sorry I'm late. Traffic is terrible.
It sure is. But on top of that, gas prices have been skyrocketing. I can't believe how expensive gas has gotten recently.
Prices at the pump are up, but I never pay full price for gas anymore. I just use the free Get Upside gas app that pays you cash back for every gallon of gas you buy.
Wait a minute. Are you saying you actually get paid cash when you buy gas with the Get Upside app?
Yes, up to 25 cents a gallon cash back every time I buy gas.
And does that actually add up to anything?
Some months I make $200 to $300.
Wow, that's serious extra cash. I'm downloading the free Get Upside app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now in the App Store or Google Play to save up to 25 cents a gallon when you buy gas. Use promo code RACE for a 25 cents a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's up to 50 cents a gallon on your first fill-up. You can cash out anytime to your bank account, PayPal, or an e-gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Get Upside app and use promo code RACE for up to 50 cents a gallon cash back on your first tank. That's code RACE.
And let's continue. Instead of let's go, let's continue. Welcome back to the Sports Cubicle. We're here for a second hour. I don't know why. I guess you guys like us a little bit too much. Thank you for joining us. And if you're wondering, this is not the family meeting. Where is the family meeting? They'll be back next week, guys. Don't worry about it. They were nice enough to let us fill in. The good folks at CPT were nice. WCPT were nice enough to let us fill in. And thank you for joining us on this Sunday night. Polly! It's the end of 2021 is over here, and I can't really think of too many good things come out of it other than the Sports Cubicle here. But you're over here talking about how it's a great year to be a Buck and a great year to live in Tampa.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Tampa was title town this year as they brought home two major championships, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Tampa Bay Lightning once again. It's kind of a similar story to 2020 as the Lightning and then the Rays making the World Series in the previous year. But in 2021, we saw the Bucks win in football, the Buccaneers, the Bucks win in basketball, the Milwaukee Bucks, Tampa Bay Lightning in hockey, the Atlanta Braves in baseball, New York City Football Club in MLS, and the Chicago Sky right here in town here for the WNBA. College sports-wise, you had the Baylor Bears winning in basketball, and Alabama Crimson Tide football once again winning a championship. Seems to be every calendar year. You can set your January to that.
Shocker.
Yeah. I mean, did any of those championships stand out to you guys once I mentioned all 6 of those or all 8 of those off the bat?
I'll tell you the one that, and it's not necessarily a good thing, it just kind of shows where sports are right now, is Baylor's men's basketball. Like, that's going to be a hard trivia question for years down the road. It has nothing to do with how good Baylor was, because Baylor was a good basketball team.
Absolutely.
It's just that I think for the most part in college sports, unless it's the SEC, people don't care anymore. A lot of it in this
for basketball or
for basketball, and I think, and I'll tell you what,
Big Ten is bigger than SEC for basketball.
Oh, for sure, but I'm talking SEC matters in college football.
Yes,
like that matters no matter what,
and that's pro,
and
that's given. That's automatic. That's why we're seeing no one's upset about Alabama, Georgia for the third straight time this year.
Exactly. Yeah. And the reason I say that about college basketball is it's going to have its fans. March Madness is what it is. Like, I love it. We're all suckers for the bracket. What I mean by it is we also understand that college basketball doesn't have the same fervor and it doesn't have the same emotional stance that a college football does nationally, in a big picture. You talk to a DePaul fan, a U of I fan, a Duke fan individually, the season matters, the team matters, but these kids aren't staying for school anymore. These guys are going to get paid. They're going to go to, D2 schools. They're going to go to HBCU schools. They're going to go to different universities, and it's not going to mean the same. The tournament is not going to have the same type of star power. Well, you're going to have the Zion Williams years where maybe they get past the first round, but it doesn't really matter because his goal is to see what he does in the NBA. So when you talk about Baylor, that team is stacked. What can you talk about that that tournament?
Well, Gonzaga was really good. It was a good final, but I think a lot of people were leaning so hard on Gonzaga that they slept on Baylor last year.
But think about how important it is. Like, here locally, we really were attached to U of I versus Loyola, and when the Ramblers made the run a few years back. But beyond that, like, it's all about your bracket and, of course, who's the big matchup in a championship game. But when you get things like Virginia, we know if you watch college basketball, like, okay, Virginia was a good team the year they made it to the finals.
But that came off of the year where they got knocked out in the first round as a number one.
And that's the biggest story. It's not necessarily the tournament, it's little moments. The tournament is the moments themselves. So I think it's fascinating when you say that list. Like, all the other championships have some type of gravitas to them. Atlanta, halfway through the season, making complete roster changes and winning the World Series. And then you have the Buccaneers with Tom Brady winning the Super Bowl, Giannis winning his title, the Sky with Candace Parker. Like, all these teams have stories and there's sports and there's just so much magnitude towards them. And then, unfortunately, look at the Baylor men's basketball team, and college basketball is starting to become that tier on when it comes to that level of championships.
Sure, but it didn't help in 2021 that the tournament itself was affected by COVID. Where it was all in Indiana, like based around Indianapolis. I think they did have people in the crowd for the championship, but it was heavily spread out. Of course, it was in the football stadium, the Lucas Oil Stadium. So, I think that could have a factor in it, but I think at the same time, you're talking about the fervor for Alabama football in Alabama, or how big SEC football is, whereas there's not really that dominant conference in college basketball. Baylor's Big 12, but ACC and Big 10 kind of seem to be the big dogs when it comes to the Power 5 conferences in basketball. But I think we're a bad example in the Chicago market of college basketball fans because we haven't had a good DePaul team in years. Illinois was supposed to be the greatest team in a long time, and they get bounced out by the Catholic school in town that really, other than that Final Four appearance a few years ago and the championship back in 1963, there's really not a lot of history.
Northwestern has struggled. UIC has struggled.
Think of how big of a deal it was a few years ago when Northwestern just made the tournament for the first time. So we have kind of a pitiful track record in this state of college basketball within the last 30 years. Now, you talk to someone older than us, and they're talking about the glory days of DePaul in the 70s.
Hey, Marver, I think you were around for the glory days of DePaul, and you're a residential DePaul fan, if I remember correctly.
Right. Well, I am, and I was there, and when they moved out of Alumni Hall after 1980 into the Rosemont Horizon at the time, they had 17,000 people there. For the Mark McGuire, the Terry Cummings. I'll tell you something else. It's like I got to have a college basketball game, in my blood. It's kind of like I got to have the needles going. I've been to 2 full games already this year in 2022. I'm on the back from one right now, and I was at the DePaul debacle yesterday, but they scored 14 points in the first half. So talk about a bad performance. But I just got back from a thrilling Illinois State Valparaiso game. It's Valparaiso won in overtime over here in Indiana. So I'm getting my fix. It's okay.
He talks about getting his fix. I was looking at NIU basketball tickets, even though I don't even know if they're never good, but it was it's only like $10 to go to a game. Why not?
It's fun. And look, I think that's something that we all miss, is being able to enjoy any type of these games, being around other fans. But I think, we obviously make jokes because Marver we talk about being on the inside when it comes to DePaul. Paulie over here is also always watching U of I basketball. So, we know locally, especially because of alumni and just out of tradition, there's a lot of fans that love a lot of these universities, whether it's on the football field, whether it's soccer, whether it's basketball. But I think nationally, I think that's one thing that you're seeing is we'll see what the Super Bowl ratings are this year. There are so many contenders, so many big franchises that imagine if it's Dallas versus a New England in the Super Bowl. Imagine if it's Dallas versus Buffalo in the Super Bowl. There is so much that these type of sports.
What if it ends up being Brady Mahomes again?
And that's going to do even better than last year. It will do better.
I think so, because the game's going to be in LA. There's probably going to be a bigger crowd this year, depending on what we're looking at in February and what California is willing to allow. But I think that was, I think COVID really did take kind of the luster out of a lot of this stuff last year. But I think that Super Bowl too, I think a lot of people rubber stamped the Chiefs as champions before that game was played, and it wasn't even close. It was all Buccaneers, an impressive defensive performance. They had Mahomes on his toes the entire time, just running away from that defense. And you saw the final proof, the official check, of Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time because he was able to win outside of the Bill Belichick system. I think that's significant in itself, but at the same time, you would have expected more exciting of a Super Bowl when you're talking about Brady versus Mahomes.
And I think the Sky winning was a big moment, not just locally. Locally, obviously here in Chicago, we love a winner. It really hit nationally, and it didn't hurt because Candace Parker was on that team. And it just goes to show what not only a superstar, and we're seeing it with the Bulls, what a superstar does, but what happens when that superstar wins in a situation where there were so many good vibes and so many people pulling for them. And I think for somebody like myself personally, I was just intrigued with the way this team came together, the way that the WNBA is kind of built and their playoff format and their scheduling for this team to kind of make the run that they did. I think that's what impressed a lot of people. I also thought they played really fun basketball, which is also a thing of product, right? You could watch a show on any network from HBO all the way down to CW. As long as it's quality basketball, a quality show, you're going to watch it, you're going to enjoy it. It's the same thing with sports. I think a lot of people used to get turned off because they're like, oh, it's the WNBA. And then you actually watch these series, you watch these teams, you watch this talent, and you're like, they can ball, and they're not just balling, they're winning. Oh, and it's one of the greatest ever that I've seen win Olympic gold medals and NCAA championships. Oh, and she's from this city.
I think now you have, a generation that's grown up with the WNBA, playing in the WNBA. So I think, the quality's gotten better with the, training over the years. But now you have a generation that at least is influenced by it. And women's basketball, I think, is only going to get more exciting from here.
And seeing an entire, Marvelous talked about DePaul at its heyday, seeing DePaul filled with arena full of people. That's what it was at Wintrust. And it wasn't DePaul playing. It was the Sky filling out that arena. It was the place to be. And this is, obviously we're a bunch of old guys here talking about it, but when the kids, the youths, are on social media hyping up this team, and Sky City, Sky Town, hashtag Sky, Candace Parker, like they were everywhere. They were on Instagram. Portillo's was hacking all their product because Candace Parker loved them. I think it is something that we all enjoyed and something we want to spotlight. But I think something that kind of had a cloud over it, and probably it's something you and I watched every single time we worked a shift here at the station. The Olympics were in 2021, and like who's talking about the Olympics? Like, I know there was moments,
off the top of your head, what do you remember about the Olympics? What's the top story from the Olympics?
Nobody was
there.
Now
you showed me the wrestling one, and I didn't even know about that.
Gable Stevenson winning the gold medal, coming back
in the last 2 seconds.
Yeah, and like to me, that was one of the big, I guess, Team USA, like for here locally, Zach Levine winning a gold medal, kind of coming into his own and starting to build relationships around the NBA. But you're right, like Simone Biles was the story of the Olympics, I think.
That's a good transition because she was named the Time Athlete of the Year, and that was interesting because she did not perform in the Olympics. She withdrew from the competition after getting what I forgot what the twisties is what it was called.
Yes,
it's kind of where you kind of like lose your equilibrium or where you're kind of at.
In golf, they call it the yips.
Well, yeah, no, but this is kind of different from the yips because it's like, you're performing a physical thing where, you have to twirl and tumble and it's
break
like,
your neck.
It'd be the same as like a diver not being able to land, head first or feet first. Yeah. So, smart on her to realize that it could be detrimental to one, her health, her physical health, and two, the team's well-being, in terms of competition, and the fact that she was the one that made that decision. It's not like something like the Team USA boycott of 1980, where these people are training and then the government decides to make that decision for them. That was her that decided to do that, and she's also had the past success because she's not chasing something now. She knows what it's like to win the all-around and to be a gold medalist. So that was big on her to do that. I thought it was interesting that Time gave it to someone for a lack of performance on the field versus someone that had a great performance on the field, like let's say a Shohei Ohtani, someone that was doing stuff that Babe Ruth hasn't done in years.
Which is my next thing, Paul, because Ohtani was great, but Simone Biles, not only she brought attention to not just the sports in the Olympics, but to the whole mental health case. I mean, there were people praising her and trashing her left and right for this decision.
I think it comes down to it's not apples and apples, but it's almost like the most valuable player or the most valuable player on their team. What Simone Biles did for social commentary for sports in general is a bigger story than what Shohei Ohtani actually did on the field. I mean, I think both are so important. First of all, they're both breaking down barriers that in their own different way, and they're breaking down different stigmas in their own way. I'm proud of Simone Biles. You don't have to like necessarily how anybody handles any situation, but at the end of the day, she cared about her health. And I'm also really excited to see Shohei Ohtani, and I'm glad that a lot of people are able to love a Japanese-born player that plays for the Los Angeles Angels of Anaheim. Like, there is something cool about that, but there's also showing that there's room for improvement. Marver, you hear some of this. I mean, do you even remember that there's an Olympics and the fact that Simone Biles was just part of this crazy storm of people judging her not knowing that they've ever been on this little 3x2-inch thing?
Marver?
Marvelous One is out scouting. You can tell that he's getting ready to find the next Bears catch coach.
No. You were fading out on me. I'm here.
Okay, so the Marvelous One, let me ask you this. Simone Biles and the Olympics happening this year. We're talking about her being the athlete of the year from, was it Time Magazine?
Yeah.
Your opinion, I mean, seeing for the year that was, I mean, how crazy is it that the Olympics even happened? We really didn't have a lot of fervor for it, but Simone Biles being the center of attention and breaking down a lot of different barriers, whether good or bad for people's opinion, being the focal point and not even winning in the event we were all expecting her to win.
Yeah. I mean, I know Candace Parker was named Athlete of the Year in another publication. So, I mean, Simone Biles brought some attention to mental health issues. I mean, there's been other athletes that have done that in tennis and in other sports. But in terms of athletics, I mean, obviously she's a role model, and and a terrific athlete. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to, perform and show her full skill in this Olympics. And, believe it or not, we have another Olympics in a few weeks, and there'll be no U.S. hockey professionals in it. So there's a lot of stuff going on that's different than what we're used to.
And I think going into just some of that, I think on the back half of this second hour, we'll talk about some of the biggest moments and some of the biggest stories that are going to lead into 2022, because that does play into effect of what we've seen from, the Olympics, how amateurism, right? I think that was the big thing that a lot of people kind of transferred that into college athletes. And to see what Simone Biles has done with mental health, to see what's happened with Antonio Brown, I think that's going to be the story of 2022 is athletes and how we as fans, as we as media, and as the athletes themselves are going to handle some of these situations. Simone Biles was one case. Naomi Osaka was one case. You look at Serena Williams, who's always kind of fought with these things. And now you're starting to see it in a lot of these other sports, in the NBA, the NFL, MLB, where people are going to have to start taking care of their mental health, what it means to them. We saw it with Calvin Ridley, just as top of the food chain when it comes to wide receivers in the NFL, and said, I need to go get right. So I don't know about you guys, 2021, that being a big story, how do you think that lends into 2022?
I mean, it's a valid point here, but what we're leading out is Michael Jordan took a few years away from basketball and baseball just because he was tired, and that's the thing.
Supposedly.
Supposedly.
As the story goes.
But no one's going criticizing Michael Jordan's toughness. No one's criticizing Calvin Ridley's toughness here, and that's the thing, I'm starting to see a lot of these cases here, and I'm starting to wonder, is it mental health, or in the NFL, is this a huge case of CTE really affecting a lot of guys here? And I think maybe we need some, protocols, and as people like to criticize Goodell for keeping players safe, heaven for effing bid. But again, mental health, I've struggled with it my whole life. I'm sure several thousands, hundreds of listeners have at least, and so you gotta take care of yourself here, guys. Like, we're all on radio, we all work ourselves and burn ourselves to the end of that candle, and there's days where we just get back and we just pass out in bed. And I think this is definitely something we need to kind of focus on here and not criticize these people for stepping out. They're speaking out because, hey, they're in the spotlight doing all this stuff here. Simone Biles could have broken her effing neck from a guy who can't even do 3 sit-ups without getting winded, Well,
if we're going to talk about, withdrawing from competitions and mental health, we got to bring up Naomi Osaka.
Yes,
she was kind of before Biles, withdrawing from the French Open, opting not to compete in Wimbledon. And that set off kind of a firestorm of, how dare she, and just kind of the way the public scrutiny that she received from not wanting to do certain interviews, just not feeling comfortable there. So I think, is part of the bigger story of mental health in sports. If we're going to talk about Simone Biles, we got to bring up Naomi Osaka. But, like Devin, you bring up a good point, though, about the NFL with just the CTE. You've been seeing guys over the last few years that are kind of throwing away, maybe that's not the best way to put it, but leaving the game early to sacrifice, I'd rather have, not have lingering injuries and not have any sort of, brain damage going further.
Andrew Luck. Andrew Luck was they were calling him John Elway. The man was this close. Look at how this Colts team is right now. Imagine how they would be with a healthy Andrew Luck compared to a Carson Wentz. I mean, and he left in the prime of his career because he was sick of getting brain damage. And we as fans, I think this is it, right? And I put us as fans. I don't think anybody, just because you do radio or you write an article, that doesn't mean you can't be a fan or that you're not on that type of... You could just be smart enough and have common sense to watch what's going on with some of these guys. And to have this notion that you can have some sympathy and empathy for these guys. I think in 2022, all of us need to do a better job of reading details, to being a little bit more conscious about some of the things we say. We talk about sprained ankles and torn MCLs and torn ACLs and back spasms like they're nothing, but we call off work and we have the sniffles. It's like there is still something to kind of understanding and having some form of compassion for these guys. Like, I get it. Antonio Brown comes off as a clown when he does that, but we don't know.
It doesn't help what he did today, though.
But this is an example. It's like 10 years from now, when we find out something is wrong, if something's wrong, we're going to look back at how we handled some of these situations, how we talked about some of these situations, and I hope that we're able to grow a little bit as a fan base on all. You can say somebody plays bad. objectively, like, that's okay. You can boo somebody like that. The point is Derrick Henry. Calling Derrick Henry soft because he has a broken foot. It's like he's playing in the National Football League. He's lucky he's probably not. Right now, Dalvin Cook up north has 2 broken shoulders, essentially. Mm-hmm. Like, these guys, these athletes, these women are all playing with injuries. And I hope when we see something like just with mental health itself that, okay, we can have some form of understanding that Calvin Ridley is a tough guy. He's an athlete. He's a superstar. But just like the rest of us, people go through some stuff.
And all valid points here. One thing I want to bring up is Clay Matthews. He was on Mean Tweets a few years back, and someone's tweeted, Clay Matthews, you're sitting out for a broken thumb. Tear that mother bleeper off and get back in the game. And I'm just sitting here like, just imagine, like, if our boss is like, oh, Mercado, you're bleeding out of your head? No, take that up, bro, and get back in the booth.
Well, right here in town, the way they treated Jay Cutler after he tore his MCL in the NFL chair.
If you can walk, you can play, but they let Derrick Rose sit for, like, years with a bad toe, you know?
But this is what's frustrating about the Jay Cutler thing, and I know we're going to the past, but then you have Maurice Jones-Drew, who was the one that didn't help. So it's somebody within their own community. So it's not until, not only us as fans, us in media, they have to also do it themselves. Mm-hmm. So understand that, and it's something you hear cliche, playing hurts and playing injured. You do play hurt. You do go to work with a headache sometimes. You do go to work if your back was a little messed up because you slept wrong. But if you have a broken back, you don't have to go to work. And it's the same thing in all sports. Like, you can't expect these people to be Superman because these are the most explosive athletes we've seen of all time. Think about how great athletes have just gotten over these years. So when Derrick Rose is tearing his MCL and Ricky Rubio at this point in the NBA, who's no Derrick Rose is tearing his MCL, you have to understand that this is just, that's the way sports are. So I hope in 2022, I hope that Naomi and Simone Biles and all these other great athletes are a precursor to how we do treat people. Because what have we been saying forever? Mental health is physical health, and we believe that here on the Sports Cubicle. So I think we're really excited to see, hopefully, the world of sports change in a positive way. That doesn't mean you can't be critical. That doesn't mean that you can't judge and be objective when you're scouting and talking about the game and how things were executed. But we're still talking about humans. We've been trying to fire Matt Nagy for 11 weeks now, right? He's still a good guy. And we saw how he addressed the Jeff Dickerson loss. And we've seen him kind of handle this all in stride. So while he may be a bad head coach, he's still a decent dude, and we got to remember that.
And that is a valid thing. That's like, we don't always agree with people, but at the end of the day, these guys are still human. Who is Matt Nagy really hurting physically? Emotionally, all our feelings, but, you know, the guy, he seems like you could share a beer with him maybe, but again, these are real people here, guys. They just make way more money than us, and if that's the case, there's a lot more people we could be mad at that are doing a lot worse, a lot more money.
Who is your athlete of the year? Let us know. We're on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. If you missed any one of our past episodes, any one of our past interviews, we're on the archives over at WCPT's SoundCloud and wherever you get your favorite podcast at Mercado Airwaves Network. And you can check out the video version of the podcast over at youtube.com/Mercado Airwaves Network and at the Rewind Sports 60. It's been a fast-paced shows, boys. Devin Tingle, Paul Chivari, Dan Marver, myself, Mike Mercado. We want to hear from you. Who was your athlete of 2021? Who was your team of 2021? Where can the fine folks find us, Dev?
You can find us at WCPT 820's Facebook. You can find us on the Rewind Sports 60 Roku, Amazon, iOS, Google Play Store, Satellite in the Sky, Blimp. I think, Paul's got some, Rewind Sports 60 boxer briefs on, you're telling me about?
He showed this to us.
Okay, yeah. But keep those off the camera here, though.
And where can people call us?
773-763-9278. And please, that's actually, I like your question, Mercado. Who was your athlete of the year? Who would you guys say? Let's go around. I'm curious.
So I am going to see my athlete of the year in 2021 was probably Giannis Antetokounmpo after winning the NBA Finals.
Yeah, I was kind of leaning that direction, too. I think Giannis. But I do like Shohei. I thought it was really interesting that Time chose Simone Biles. But yeah, gun to my head, I'd say Giannis Antetokounmpo. That was impressive considering that it's been LeBron's league for so long and that he was able to overcome that despite so many opportunities of getting close with the Bucks. And no one in their right mind would have ever expected the Milwaukee Bucks to win a championship in the LeBron James era.
Marver, who would you say was your athlete of the year?
Oh, yeah. You can't go wrong with the Greek Freak. I pick him too, and it's just the other guy that's amazing is Brady. I mean, he seems like he's the athlete of every year for the last 20 years.
That's a good call.
I'm going to stick with a fan favorite here. My athlete of the year was Tim Anderson. I'm going to be local here. Look at a guy for the White Sox who had one hell of a season here.
Let us know all over the universe. We're on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV. It's been a fast hour and a half already, boys. We have one last half of the show, and the Paulacious one has brought up a bunch of good stuff so that we close out us covering for the family meeting. You're on the Sports Cubicle. It's Devin Tingle. It's Dan Marver. It's Paul Chivari. I'm Mike Mercado.
To be fair, Tim Anderson wanted to play basketball when the Bulls had COVID problems.
Stand by. Stick around.
It's official. The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath is on WCPT 820.
The reality is right in our face, and we have work to do, and people know it.
The former Lincoln Park alderman and former CEO of the Sun-Times, Edwin Eisendrath,
It's familiar to many of you.
will give his unique spin on the political climate every Saturday afternoon from 1 to 4 p.m.
You won't want to miss that, and I'm going to want to hear from you.
The Big Picture with Edwin Eisendrath.
Look, this country has Democrats, and it has Republicans, and it has mayors.
Only on WCPT 820.
The Rewind Sports 60 channel on Roku. Watch us 24 hours, 7 days a week, around the clock on the new TRS 60 Roku channel. Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, and the TRS 60 app. The new TRS Roku channel, your round-the-clock sports and entertainment channel. If you miss any portion of the show, be sure to look out for the continuous replay broadcasts on Roku. Don't forget to check out our website, therewindsports60.com. Lock it in.
This is a WCPT Moment in Labor. In 2011, 6 Jimmy John's employees in Minneapolis were fired by their franchise-owning company, Mickey Lynn Enterprises, after fighting for paid sick days. This is a common theme in the union-free world of fast food. Over 13 million Americans work in the fast food industry, making an average of $13,500 a year, not even half the average cost of living. 80% of fast food workers have experienced work-related injuries, and only 13% were covered by their employer. A group of employees referred to as the Jimmy John's Six fought for these rights, creating an online campaign, posting a picture of 2 sandwiches saying one of these was made by a healthy employee, the other was made by a sick employee. Can you tell the difference? Too bad, as Jimmy John's workers do not get paid sick days. Help workers win sick days. More than 32 million Americans work a job that does not offer paid sick days. This has been a WCPT Moment in Labor. We're working for your rights.
And thank you for listening to the Sports Cubicle. We're having a lot of fun over here. Mercado, what did your mom just say for Athlete of the Year?
Her favorite Athlete of the Year is COVID spreader Aaron Rodgers. So
I mean,
that's the win.
I don't know. He's been playing a hell of a year.
Shout out to Mom.
But good old Mama Mercado. And I mean, at this point, you might want to find a new mama.
I guess so. She is a Packers fan, and she's made my life miserable for 32 years now.
Definitely find a new mama.
It's been a fun show, boys, at the Sports Cubicle, and we're going to continue it here. It is Devin Tingle, it's Dan Marver, Paul Chivari, myself, Mike Mercado. We are filling in for the family meeting here on the Sports Cubicle. We're normally on 9 to 10 p.m. We have a bunch of awesome interviews, conversations throughout the week, so make sure you join us to end your weekend every Sunday night right here on WCPT. We're on Twitter at Sports Cubicle TV, all over the universe on Mercado Airwaves Network, and of course the archives of the SoundCloud of WCPT 820. Paulie, what else you got for us that in remembrance of 2021?
A lot of people had passed away in 2021 in the sports world, and we talked about at the top of the show about John Madden, how much of an impact he had, and I could go on for a while with great stories about John Madden, but I thought one of the bigger personalities that we lost this year in sports was Hank Aaron, right at the beginning of the year,
yeah.
and just what that ended up turning into with, whether you want to say it was directly related or not, the Atlanta Braves winning their 4th championship in franchise history, and long-time Atlanta Brave or Milwaukee Brave with Hank Aaron. But it's weird when you talk about number 44 Hank Aaron, and it was like the Braves had 44 wins before the All-Star break, 44 wins after the All-Star break. They won the World Series on the 44th week of the calendar year. Just weird things like that, but we're talking about like a legend in Hank Aaron that was still with us up until January of 2021.
In a sport where numbers matter so much, where we idolize and we memorialize items so much, to see 44 constantly just be brought up with that team, and then to see the run that they did. And I think what a lot of people remember about Hank is just the gentleman that he was and what he represented. So I think that loss, like, it was just so heavy in the sports world. And then not just in the sports world, what it meant to culture, what it meant to our society. That was a hard one when it happened.
And I think the Braves were already planning on honoring him at the All-Star game this year because they were supposed to be the original host of the All-Star game. That's a story, too, that happened this year of how
Georgia on its own sports merit, all the stuff that was happening politically, and a lot of, not just sports, a lot of entertainment moving, so let alone the All-Star game. You're 100% right.
And I never would have thought that the All-Star game would get moved that close to the All-Star game. You know, I think a month to go, they pulled it out of Atlanta, put it in Denver at Coors Field. So,
which ended up being a very interesting All-Star game.
Yeah, absolutely. The uniforms were ugly. But
totally ugly. Yeah.
What if they had good All-Star game uniforms, really?
Well, they normally wear their own uniforms.
That is true, but I'm saying in the home run derby, I mean...
Oh, yeah, they're always ugly,
I
but
will
yeah.
defend the hats, though. I thought they were pretty nice. I want to get a White Sox one, and it's sold out before I got the chance to.
Yeah, but baseball's big moment, and we talked about it last week. Make sure you check it out on the archives. Was definitely Field of Dreams.
But I thought, you know, in addition to Hank Aaron, another big baseball face of baseball, Tommy Lasorda passing away, and then in basketball, Elgin Baylor. I thought those were kind of the big three this year of you know, biggest sports deaths of the year. But you know, we had you know, Ray Fosse and Jerry Remy, the former players / broadcasters in baseball. Irv Cross, a legend in football broadcasting as well as African American broadcasters. The Pedro Gomez, surprising, you know, that surprised me that he passed away so young. I think he was like in his 50s, and it was just kind of sudden. Basketball coach Paul Westphal, both the Unser brothers, Al Sr. and Bobby. Don Sutton, the Hall of Fame pitcher. Some young guys, Demarius Thomas, the former receiver, Vincent Jackson, the former NFL receiver, Colt Brennan. I don't know if he ever made it into the NFL, but he was a
great
great college guy.
Quarterback, yeah.
And that was a surprise to me as I was researching this. You know, some boxers, Leon Spinks, Marvin Hagler, legendary college basketball coach John Chaney, football player Floyd Little, baseball manager Joe Altobelli, Miracle on Ice, Team USA hockey player Mark Pavlovich. We got Stan Olbeck, the former Bulls coach, and Marty Schottenheimer, the former football coach. And even though it was 2022, we got to throw Dan Reeves in there because that just happened yesterday.
And not sports related, Betty White.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it was a tough year. I mean, it was a tough year. And in a year and a half, 2 years, where we've seen a lot of death.
Mm-hmm. But especially Betty White and John Madden, where it's like at points where they were kind of being honored, and Betty White 17 days away from her 100th birthday. I mean, there's magazines on the rack that are talking about how she was going to turn 100.
It's so heartbreaking. And I think this is something that I've had family members, and I've talked about it with you guys. It's giving people their flowers when they're around. Giving people the love and admiration while they're here. And I think Betty White and John Madden specifically, because they were here for so long, they lived such fulfilling lives that we still think they were gone too soon, that they got to see it. But then you went through some of these lists, like Demarius Thomas didn't get a chance to be fully retired. You know, Vincent Jackson was one of the beloved guys, especially when I first started playing fantasy football, for example, that dude was a stud, a precursor to Mike Evans, you know? And you see the tragedy of the difference between them, of how they passed away and how just it brings on different things long term and what it's going to affect their sport they played for.
Well, I'm throwing another one at you. Jerry Remy, you know, was dying of lung cancer, throws out the first pitch at the American League Wild Card game, and I think he passed before the World Series had even wrapped up.
Do you guys, being in this industry, and I think being sports fans, you could say you don't even have to be, we won't even be just that inclusive, just for everybody. Being a sports fan, also being so attached to media members, to journalists, to beat reporters. This stuff does impact you. Marver, you've been covering, scouting, coaching, watching for so long, and you've seen some of the brightest and the most loveliest people leave us. I mean, what does it do for you when you see something that we're so attached to, that are part of our daily lives? How important is it to make sure that you're appreciating the people that we have around us and that we follow and watch every single day?
You're absolutely right. I mean, people like Hank Aaron, they're larger than life, so it's like they're still here, even though they're not. Mm-hmm. I mean, he went through so much, beating Babe Ruth's record, racism and other things, but, back in the 70s. So and you can see how things have changed. When he got the home run, there were fans running all over the field. They were riding on his back. I mean, you'll never see that again. Yeah. But in any event, I mean, these guys, Madden and Betty White, I mean, icons, and there's, and the video, they do live on in a way. And even if you talk about family members, I mean, 4 years ago, I was at a 100th birthday party for a family member. And in this case, we got to get it in, and then she passed. So, I mean, while they're here, yes, they should be honored, definitely.
Devin, you see some of these names. You've seen what has been a crazy year. Marvelous has brought it up of just these icons, these giants. I mean, how does it impact you being in the industry, being a fan of so many different mediums? When you get attached, when you're part of these families, what does it mean when we lose people like this?
I mean, these are people you look up to. I mean, you talk about Vincent Jackson. Demarius Thomas was my first fantasy football guy. I kept him my year every league till someone drafted him. That guy's still a jerk in my mind. But I digress. It's as much as we talk about how it's we don't know these people. In a way, there is an attachment to that. I think even when these celebrities, these icons, these athletes, pass, it's still something. I remember watching Demarius Thomas back when I was in middle school, or I think I was that young.
Yeah.
Guys who've been around forever, and it's kind of just guys. Oh, I kind of forgot he was retired for a little bit, because that's how, you said, it's he's been out of the league for not very long, and definitely these things do hit a lot, more. I mean, granted, personal, my cat Lucy passed away this year. That's still the hardest last year. Yeah. That's still the hardest loss for me. Yeah. But seeing these, guys like John Madden, a guy who changed the game, a guy whose video games I played my entire year. I told Paul I was playing Madden last night. It was 3rd and down. I went to ask Madden, and I'm like, oh yeah, it's weird.
I mean, it just goes to show, and I think as we move on to the show, and it'll be something that I think we'll continue on doing stories, doing sports shows, living life, right? But I think the most important thing to do is appreciate the people in your life. Give them the flowers while they're here, and just live in the moment as much as you can. And there are a lot of big moments in 2021, the Olympics, Tiger Woods, Paulie. You were able to bring some of these moments to our attention. What really caught your eye when you were making some of these lists?
I had forgotten that the Tiger Woods car accident happened in 2021, and I didn't get a chance to watch that tournament where he played with his son and almost beat the Daly, the Dailies, which, the fact that the Daly kid is in college playing golf.
And
Charlie's a boy, and it's probably going to be a great golfer based on, the fact that he was able to hang in a tournament like that paired with his father. So, I had forgotten about that and how impressive that it is that Tiger Woods is golfing again 10 months after an accident like that. But this was the year that Carl Nassib became the first openly gay NFL player. And then, of course, later we find out his own coach had a lot of homophobic things to say in some emails from years prior.
Now that we've had some time, the football season is ending. That is going to be one of the major stories in the NFL. Him, Urban Meyer, and whoever wins the Super Bowl and the MVP of the league. Those are going to be the 4 stories of the year. How impactful do you think this Gruden story really has been to this league and to the league moving forward? I mean, do you think that the ripple effect of maybe Dan Snyder going down at some point, this thing is going to be multi-tentacled at some point, right?
I haven't kept up to see what sort of investigations are they doing beyond that, though, because it did kind of feel like, okay, so they were investigating the Washington football team. I would assume that there's going to be way worse stuff than what Gruden was saying if you really investigated the whole league. So I'm wondering, is the NFL sweeping this under the rug and hoping that this is in the rearview mirror, or are we going to hear about more stuff in the future like this?
Well, I did my research here, and Deadspin has voted John Gruden the #1 idiot of 2021.
Okay. And is Urban Meyer number 2, or do they not have a number 2?
I just read the headline on that guy.
So let me ask you guys then, which one long-term is going to be a bigger black eye if we look at the 2021 season? Is the Urban Meyer debacle, or is it John Gruden?
Gruden, without question, yeah.
I actually do have the top 10 here, so I'll finish that if we get our thoughts here.
Marver, which one do you think is going to be the bigger black eye for the league, specifically the 2021 campaign? Urban Meyer debacle, or what John Gruden did in his emails?
Urban Meyer, I think, is going to last a little longer. But both of them are pretty bad. I don't want to call it a tie because I have to pick one, so I'll pick Urban Meyer.
Yeah, Urban Meyer is actually kind of at a higher spot here. So #1 in the Idiot of the Year is John Gruden. #2 is your mom's boy, Aaron Rodgers, Mercado. Trevor Bauer comes in at number 3.
How ironic, though, that an idiot would be also a host of Jeopardy.
That's bad.
Yeah, let that sink in. How the mighty have fallen.
LeVar Burton. Let's go.
Our Chicago Blackhawks have come in at number 4. Urban Meyer takes number 5.
Okay, so I think we can stop there. That is a good.
We spent a good episode on it.
And definitely, again, the archives, the WCPT 820 SoundCloud, and wherever you get your favorite podcasts on all major podcast platforms, at Mercado Airwaves Network, and on YouTube. Mercado Airwaves Network. Make sure you subscribe to us there. That is something that, while it seems like we've moved on because hockey has started and this team has played, they fired coaches, the entire front office is gone essentially. That was not just a major story, that was a upsetting story to this day, that anytime it does get brought up, even if the Blackhawks went on a winning streak, this is something that's not going to go away from them anytime soon. What do you guys think?
It still doesn't sit well with me. I still don't like the fact that I have a jersey in my closet. I don't know whether to give it away for free or make money off of it.
No, I get it. It's tough. Yeah, no, I get it. What else you got?
Oh, I mean, okay, as far as stories?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So, I know you guys aren't soccer guys, but Lionel Messi leaving Barcelona, he'd been there since he was 13 in their youth academy and left Barcelona to go to PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, to form a kind of a power trio with some guys there. We'll see if that turns into anything. But also keeping it in soccer, the Euros were this summer, and England was so close to bringing it home, only to lose in penalties to Italy. But also in a summer, too, that saw Chelsea lift the Champions League, keeping Manchester City from winning their first Champions League, but then taking it outside of soccer. Are we ever going to see Kyrie Irving play basketball ever again? And if so, will it be in the city of New York? Because there's been talk about finding a way to just have him play on the road in towns that won't require him to be vaccinated to play in their arenas.
And we'll find out what it means for that team moving forward when it comes to championship aspirations, because what happens when you have to play 2 at home and 2 on the road back-to-back? Like, there is a lot. And in the finals, 2-3-2, that comes up to being really big.
Well, I think it's 2-2-1-1-1 now in basketball. I think they changed that rule a few years ago.
We'll check that in 1 second, but I wanted to talk a little bit as we looked back at 2021. It's time to look forward to 2022. And this is going to be really fun because it is time that this is the only time of year where we can be outrageous. Now, mind you, we are radio hacks, so we always get the chance to be outrageous and say bad opinions, but this is the one time where we're never going to be wrong. We can't be wrong until we're actually finally proven incorrect. And that is to make some bold predictions coming up in the sports world of 2022. Now, of course, there's easy ones like, where's Aaron Rodgers going to play? Is he going to stay, retire, whatnot? So we're going to be more specific if you go down that road. So I will start off with one, and I will say the Chicago Bulls will be in the NBA Finals in 2022.
I'm writing all these down.
So the Chicago Bulls will be in the NBA Finals in 2022.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes, I believe they will beat the Milwaukee Bucks in 7 games in the Eastern Conference Finals.
Okay, so hold up.
They will be playing the Milwaukee Bucks in a 7-game series. I think this is a team that has the type of guys that haven't been through the ringer the same way the teams that have been through the bubble and then came back and played a shortened season to then go back to the NBA Finals. They're the only team in this playoff hunt right now that, because they were bad before, haven't had the miles under them that some of these other teams have had. So maybe as an X factor, that is just one maybe outrageous prediction. What do you got, Paulie?
The Chicago Cubs win the Field of Dreams game.
Okay, very outrageous.
Wow, what's the score going to be, Mr. Specific?
I don't think it's going to be a dramatic walk-off. I think it's going to be like a 7-3.
Very interesting.
What do you got?
Not at all interesting.
Marver, what do you got for us?
Marver, outrageous, crazy prediction for 2022. What do you got?
Well, I think I've said this before. Russell Wilson will either be with the Pittsburgh Steelers or the Green Bay Packers, depending on which one of those veteran quarterbacks actually doesn't play for those teams next year.
Interesting. How about this? I'll throw in a third team for you for the Russell Wilson thing. I think Russell Wilson will not be playing for Seattle, will not be playing for Oakland, now known as the Las Vegas Raiders. Yeah. He'll be playing for the Cleveland Browns. I believe
Baker Mayfield's not going to stick with the Browns?
I believe that is the trade scenario where Baker Mayfield is good enough and that Seattle can turn it around and say, like, yeah, we got ourselves a quarterback that we can still evaluate. He's got some money. Maybe we could do something. We're seeing what's happening in Seattle right now. There's no chemistry between him and DK Metcalf. Taylor Lockett is hit or miss. They don't have a running game anymore. I think, how close was he to being a Bear?
Yeah.
Like Russell Wilson's on the move. There's a lot of teams that could vie for him. I think Derek Carr's kind of played his way into staying with Vegas for another year. I like Derek Carr. I always thought he was on the other end of the top tier of the guys. So I think you're looking at, and Aaron Rodgers will be playing for the Denver Broncos.
Okay.
Those are my 2 guesses. Russell Wilson will end up in Cleveland, and Aaron Rodgers will end up in Denver.
I think you're right about Carr sticking with Las Vegas. I think, especially in the post-Gruden Raiders this season, and the fact that, like, they're 1 win away from making the playoffs. I haven't looked at the picture yet, but that win today over the Colts is big for this franchise this season. he's got 1 year left on his deal, and he'll become a free agent after 2022. I think they would get an extension done. I think he's meant so much to that franchise that they would try to reward him, and maybe he would take the hometown discount because he likes being a Raider. After that, I don't know. I mean, who's going to be coaching the Raiders? I don't know. I'd love to say Eric Bieniemy, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think this organization is going to take a shot on someone. I think they want someone with some proven success, but I mean, we'll see. I guess, another bold prediction for me, I say Liverpool wins the Champions League this year.
Are you sure you want to put that? That's it. It's in the universe.
Yeah, no, it's in the universe. Yeah, they're winning the Champions League this year.
Devin, what do you got? You're staying quiet. No, we want you to have some egg in your face. What predictions here?
I'm going to go more recent. I say we will see the Buccaneers face the Patriots in the Super Bowl this year.
Oh, okay.
And I think the Bucs will win with Tom Brady getting the MVP.
Back-to-back against his old team. Belichick loses to Brady. That is interesting. And we did make our original prediction. So on a future episode of the Sports Cubicle, we will circle back and talk about some of our early season predictions. But as of right now, you are going Brady versus Belichick.
That was not the prediction I made at the beginning of the year. But I think this year, with Mac Jones, he's having the Tim Tebow year right now. He's not playing the greatest, but this team is still winning here. And as we learned, who can shut down the Tim Tebow type? It's Tom Brady.
All right, Marver, I'm going to throw this one to you. I'm about to make a guess. I don't know how bold it is or how crazy out there it is, but I want to see your thoughts. Carlos Correa will be a Chicago Cub.
Agreed. Absolutely, 100%.
Paulie, is that crazy?
That's not crazy. I think he won't be a Cub, though, but I'm trying to think off the top of my head, a team that's looking for a shortstop right now that would spend the money. Not the Dodgers, maybe the Yankees. Cubs are definitely a strong candidate. Tigers are out of the running. I'll go with Dodgers. I think he ends up there.
It's going to be interesting because baseball is not even a thing yet. So I think maybe that's something we need to tackle right now. I mean, we're making the bold predictions. When do we get baseball?
Yeah, Paul, you said it'd be back by Christmas.
Well, yeah, that's assuming that they were going to talk to each other. So
our resident baseball expert, Baseball Weekend Journal, every weekend, Paul Chivari, bringing the fire, making sure that he's staying tabs with it. We'll start with you. The lockout. When do we get baseball back in 2022? Do we get baseball back in 2022?
Absolutely. I think we do. And I'm still confident that it's not going to be a long negotiation. I think there will be posturing for a couple of weeks, but I think when push comes to shove and you can smell spring training around the corner, they're going to get it done. I think maybe pitchers and catchers will get delayed at this point, just based on the fact that from everything I'm hearing about this is that the players are ready to talk. The league keeps making these proposals that just doesn't even compromise to any degree. I think once it gets closer and the league realizes that they're losing leverage, they're going to get something done quick.
Marver, do we get baseball in 2022? And if we do, when are we getting Major League Baseball?
I'm afraid it may be a truncated season. Hopefully it'll be not like the year the Montreal Expos got cheated out of the playoffs, where it was half and half, remember? But I think that was because it was in the middle of the season that happened. It may not be 162 games this year, but there will be a season.
Dev?
I'd like to say hopefully mid-February, late February. But right now, I'm a little with Marver. I think we're probably going to get a shorter season, not a full one. But I would like the 162. But I think with this, and on top of the new Omicron variant coming out, definitely it's probably going to be a shorter season.
It will be a shorter season. They will not play until after April, but we will get baseball in 2022.
I got a crazy baseball prediction.
Let's hear it.
Craig Kimbrell is going to be the closer for the White Sox this year.
You sure?
We're talking crazy, though.
That is crazy.
I'll write it down for Paul.
That is crazy. I think you still...
No, maybe split with Hendricks. But I think you're going to see Sox will be stuck with Kimbrell, and they're eventually going to have to just kind of slot. Maybe Hendricks has some problems, and they reverse roles for a while.
Yeah, Mercado has this list for you, Paul. It's called Reasons Why You're Full of Crap. I'm just going to put that on there.
That is definitely one of them.
Who's Kimbrell pitching for this year?
Oh man,
I'll walk it back. I think he stays with the White Sox.
Yeah, I think he stays with the White Sox.
Same.
I just think there's too much uncertainty going on in baseball right now, and too much that has to still happen for us to get baseball. That I think a move like that is going to take some time.
They were talking about the last CBA being a contentious negotiation, and they got it done in a matter of a couple of days. That's why I'm confident that this won't even affect opening day.
It's going to be interesting to see what baseball and how fans respond to what's going on with baseball? Because right now, fans I don't think are really even caring too much because nothing's really been affected by it yet.
And most fans don't know the nitty-gritty of it, so they look at it as the millionaires versus the billionaires and that they're both crying and complaining, and it's a lot more complex than that. So no matter what, any loss of regular season playing time is going to hurt the league for years to come.
And we'll see how fans come back. Devin brought it up about Omicron. We'll see if fans want to come back. We'll see how much they're invested and which teams are invested, how this plays out for Major League Baseball. There's a lot of stuff they're going to have to iron out, and Paulie will be all over it at Baseball Weekend Journal. As we're already wrapping up, guys, it's been a fun 2 weeks. We have been able to kind of touch it all in both 2021 and looking forward to 2022. I want to thank the amazing group over at Family Meeting for letting us fill in these last 2 weeks. Shout out to Mark Pinsky for, again, giving us the keys, and to Matt Cummings, an amazing job as well, always looking out for us. I want to make sure we invite you all to stay with us. Even though we're not going to be here 4 to 6, the amazing people at the Family Meeting will be here. We're still going to be here at the mother station at WCPT 9 to 10 p.m. So if you've ever missed a past episode, we are in the SoundCloud of WCPT. So check out the archives there at WCPT 820, the Sports Cubicle. If you missed any episode, any interview, we're all over the universe, every major podcast platform at Mercado Airwaves Network, and at YouTube, Mercado Airwaves Network. Baseball Weekend Journal. If you are a baseball nut, if you are clamoring, waiting to get back to pitchers and catchers, Paul Chivari has you covered. And when I say covered, it is like a blanket. I'm super excited about that. I want to give a quick shout out to Devin Tingle for doing amazing work on the board, doing all the production, getting us here for the last 2 shows, doing amazing work when we're here 9 to 10, staying late in the studio, making sure we sound good. Dan Marver for doing some amazing work, joining us however he can and making sure he is a part of these conversations with you. And we want to thank you guys for being so interactive on Facebook, on social media. It has meant a lot to us. If you want to be interactive, you want to stay in touch with us, these 2 gentlemen are always on my personal show at Sports from the Couch, and I'm also on Twitter at Mike M Media. Boys, I've had a wonderful time. I can't wait to talk more sports. Next time we'll be on the air. Bears will be done with the NFL season. The Bulls will be another week into it, and we will see what happens in Major League Baseball. But it's been a great 2 weeks here for me.
I love you, Mercado, but that's not true because our replay will be on tonight
there you
at
go.
9 p.m.
You can't get rid of us that easy, guys.
So if you're up right now listening to the replay, first off, thank you for staying up late. Second, why are you up still late? We like you listening, but why are you up still late? I'm the only night out here. Come on, guys.
So as we're up against the clock, any final thoughts, Paulie?
Hey, it's a World Cup year this year, and it's going to be in Dubai. Or no, I'm sorry, it's going to be
Qatar?
Qatar, in
August?
November.
Yeah.
November.
It's going to be so hot. So, we'll be covering that here. We'll definitely be covering that here because there's a lot of things to get into, both with FIFA and with Qatar and everything happening there. But of course, Paulie, our resident football lover on the pitch, will make sure he keeps that covered. Thank you, Paulie. Marver, any final thoughts for our people?
Happy New Year 2022, everybody.
We love you, Marver.
Great year for everybody.
We love you, buddy. You are the man. Thank you for everything, Coach. Devin, any final thoughts for the people?
Here's hoping for another year of the Sports Cubicle throughout all 2022. September will be our 1-year anniversary, guys.
Please.
And I'll bring you all flowers.
Please, everybody, thank you guys so much for joining us here on the Sports Cubicle. We want to just send all the love. Love my boys here. Please make sure you guys are taking care of yourself and taking care of each other. It is some crazy times out there. But if you want to see the future of Justin Fields, if you want to see potentially number 7 NBA championship and maybe another baseball season, make sure you're taking care of yourself and your neighborhood. Get vaccinated if you can. Wear a mask. Wash your hands. Be vigilant. And love each other. Love these sports because we love you and we love talking about them. It has been an amazing 2021 for us. I'm proud about everything we've built. Proud of the boys, and I'm proud of each and every one of you. Thank you to WCPT. Thank you to the Family Meeting. Thank you to Mark Pinsky, Matt Cummings, the amazing audience. Boys, it's going to be a great 2022. A lot of stuff. The Bulls are back.
Bulls are back. Maybe the Bears will be back or not be back next year. Be something completely different.
It'll be fascinating. There's a good chance of the Bulls that when we're here next year, if we're covering again, if the universe allows it, if we haven't burned every bridge after this show, that there's a chance that the Chicago Bulls will be a team that has been in the NBA Finals. So the Chicago Bears will have a new regime, and that is exciting. There will be a new CBA for baseball. There will be new futures for the White Sox and the Cubs. And for a city like Chicago, all you can ever ask for is for a chance at a bite of greatness. So I'm excited for that.
Thank you for joining us these past 2 weeks. And, of course, you can listen to our replay at 9 p.m. tonight. Make sure you stick around for the Chicago Heel. It's a great show. You're not going to miss it. All right, boys, let's get back to the basement of the basement. Have a good night, guys.
Well, John, what did you think of tonight's episode?
I loved it, big time. But in retrospect, it was kind of a ripoff. What a way to treat the loyal fans who've put up with so much nonsense from this franchise.
Any final thoughts?
Nah, I'm too mad. Let's get the heck out of here.